Your children, are they a burden or a blessing? Well, real talk, it depends on what I'm asking you, doesn't it? And we'll get into all that in episode 24 of Motherhood Unmasked. This is Motherhood Unmasked, the podcast for real talk about the challenges moms face. I'm your host, Vanessa Harris. But mama, you're the hero. Ready to reveal the beautiful mess behind the mask? I am. Let's go. Hey there, Mama Bear. Vanessa here with compassion, candor, and clarity for you, the mom battling overwhelm and craving real talk. It's good to have you here. So we're 9 months into this pandemic, and whether your kids are distance learning, homeschooling, or physically going to school, their needs are taking up a lot of your mental real estate and physical energy. And I give you permission to feel all the feelings that come with that. Anger that you're still dealing with this dumb pandemic, that vaccine or not will affect you for several more months. Frustration at having to give more of yourself to your spouse and kids than ever, despite suffering your own effects of a world turned upside down. And sadness at the loss of freedom and family members due to this invisible pestilence taking laps around the earth. And I get it. It's squeezing the life out of you. But if you're like me, when you get squeezed, you spill all over the ones looking up to you. Real talk, my children are the first ones I'm impatient with, and the first ones I blame for needing me so much when I'm already stretched so thin. And yes, how much they pull on you depends on their age, but you know what? Even know-it-all teenagers can be quite helpless when they get ready. And who else is going to notice how the stress of this year is impacting your children? Who's going to help them process their emotions when you're still figuring out how to process yours? Who's the one with the answers? You, of course. Who else? And all that they need to eat, have clean clothes, have structure, have supplies, and have you be their peripheral brain day in and day out every year, but particularly in 2020, now 2021, spells burden. It's why I hide in my closet or in my bathroom or in my car in the garage for a few moments more before heading back into the fray. And it's easy to stay in those feelings. You may even say you're well within your right to quietly resent all the giving you're doing. You certainly wouldn't be alone. I read an article recently discussing how the pandemic and its repercussions set women back 100 years regarding the gains that we've made in the workforce. And as a case in point, the writer highlights a married working mom of 2 elementary school-aged girls who's struggling under the demands of distance learning. Lord knows we get it. We feel her pain, right? The mom goes on to share that early in her marriage, she tried to conceive but couldn't and tried everything available, including spending tens of thousands in vitro treatments to give birth to the 2 daughters she has today. Then she further sacrificed to stay home with them till they were school-aged, and now that they're in school and she finally has a career she loves, she had to quit her job to stay home with the girls and oversee their virtual schooling. And what do you think she asked? What about me? When is it my turn? And honestly, my first thought was, quit your whining. You were desperate to become a mom. You put your body and your wallet through trauma to have those girls, and now you want to tell me raising them is a burden. But then I took off my judgment hat and put on my compassion one. You know, the one you put on when it's time to put yourself in someone else's place to see life through their lens. That hat. And I realized the issue was she had given and given and given. Yeah, she willingly gave her body over to painful injections and non-romantic encounters based on body temperature, then egg harvesting and embryo implantation, followed by years of investing full-time attention in her girls and now she's called on to give even more. And when I thought about it, that pain, I felt it. But then I thought about my mom, who, though she birthed 2 daughters, is not, I say not, the poster child for a giving mother. But I watched her become as invested as ever in motherhood when my sister was diagnosed with cancer. Her child, once seen as a burden, became so precious. My mom's cool and distant demeanor now replaced with warm tears. And as I watched my mom watch my sister fight, but eventually die, I thought, the blessing of my children outweighs any season of burden. Now, I know you don't want to hear anything resembling, this is just a season, or this too shall pass. But you know what? Sometimes you have to hear things you don't want to because it's truth. This too shall pass. 2020 has passed. This pandemic will pass. And the burden of serving your family in overdrive will pass. But what will never pass is the blessing your children are. Yes, even the ones that get on your nerves. So remember that as you pretend to use the toilet, trying to get a moment to vent, to cry, to pray, to meditate, to gather yourself in peace. Remember, they're not your problem. They're your hope that better is coming. And after you honor your very real feelings, please honor your feelings. But after you honor your feelings, come on out the bathroom and give those kids a smile. Better yet, a hug, because you're grateful that you can. And that brings us to the segment of the show called Homework, the work a woman does to build her home and family. This week's homework assignment is creating a balanced narrative. And by narrative, I mean the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, others, or an occasion we experience. It's so easy to get stuck seeing a story a certain way, especially if there are strong feelings associated with it. Earlier, I asked if your kids are a burden or a blessing, and there's a story you believe that informs your answer. But the truth is, you can see them either way, depending on the circumstances. And if you see your kids negatively long enough, you can get stuck misnaming them a burden permanently. So, your homework is to keep your journal or phone handy, and whenever you feel like your child is a burden, write a note about the scenario. Honor your feelings. But for every burden narrative you write something about that child or being that child's mother that's a blessing. Write it before the day ends. Because it's right to honor your feelings, but not at the expense of truth. You and I need a balanced narrative. If that exercise helps you, I'd love to hear about it. You can leave me a DM on Instagram at Motherhood Unmasked Podcast, or leave me a message on my website at vinelifefaith.com/podcast. The website is also where you can sign up with your email to access resources like my Praying for Your Child template, 10 Power Meditations for Moms, and even the Motherhood Unmasked signature t-shirt and more. You can find all the goods at vinelifefaith.com/podcast. I so appreciate you hanging out with me today. I hope something I shared gave perspective to the very real challenges we're all facing right now. And remember, as you wrestle with finding the blessing in children that feel like burdens, you are still the woman for the job. Take care. Thanks for making this podcast part of your day today. Before you go, please be sure to rate and subscribe to the podcast. That way you get notified about new episodes while helping other moms discover the show. Motherhood Unmasked is sponsored by Vine Life Faith, where we're breaking negative cycles and building healthy community through connection with Christ. VineLifeFaith.com. motherhoodunmasked.com.